Hello, Eric Swisher here for part 3 of our beginning trumpet player series. Now I'm going to talk about use of air. Air is extraordinarily important for a trumpet player and for wind players in general. Um, Air is what passes by our lips through a formed embouchure, which allows the lips to vibrate. As they vibrate into the mouthpiece, it gets amplified through the horn. So it's extraordinarily important that you have enough air moving past your embouchure to allow it to vibrate, thereby producing a really nice, good, full sound. Now you might be thinking, wait, I can breathe, I'm alive, why do I need to worry about this for trumpet? You're going to do an exaggerated breath when you're playing the trumpet. So oftentimes when people are just speaking normally, they really only use about a third of their lung capacity. They don't use the full capacity that they've got available to them. Now, for trumpet, we don't want to go all the way up to 100% because you've probably done this exercise where you sip in, you breathe in as much as you can, and then sip, sip, sip. What you'll notice is if you do try to go up to 100% of your capacity, you've got to work really hard to hold that air back, and it causes a lot of tension. So by no means am I advocating that you try to fill up 100% all the time. I tell my people, think comfortably full. That's the verbiage that I use with them. Roughly 80, 85, maybe in some cases 90%. But that last little bit up at the top of your lung capacity is probably not worth expending all the energy that you need to get up there, because it's just going to create an awful lot of tension. Okay? Rather than give you a detailed explanation of what's going on with all the muscles, don't worry about that. What I want to do is to keep you focused on the sound of the breath. So hopefully the microphone will pick this up, but the sound that I'm going for is this. I call that a soft O breath. Okay? The idea is to have air flowing in and right back out, so we don't want to do, I call that a hitch breath, where you breathe in and then hold it and then breathe back out. Trumpet players sometimes do this before we have to play a loud note or a high note, thinking subconsciously that if you hold the air, that's going to make things easier when you have to expel it under some pressure. It doesn't work that way. So careful that you don't have that kind of a hitch breath. In and right back out. Little restriction. We certainly don't want any kind of a tense breath. So some examples of those could be you can hear that high-pitched sound that my throat is making. Nice and again, the model that we're going for is that soft O sound. Now, you don't want to exaggerate and go too far the other way and think if an O sound is good, then exaggerating it and sounding like Darth Vader would be better. It's not. You don't want to do this. That's actually, do it a couple of times while I'm talking here. What you'll notice is there's still a point of restriction back here where it's making things more difficult to blow air. So no Vader breaths, no tense breaths, and no hitch breaths. Okay? So what I'd have you do is get a metronome handy. Set it to, let's say, 60. And let's do some breathing exercises together. 1, 2, 3. Good. Those of you that were observant amongst us here probably noticed that I used a T sound when I exhaled. See if you can hear it. So as you're practicing that, see if you can use that T ta sound as you're exhaling that, or exhaling. We call that articulation, and I'll talk about that in another subsequent video here. But we want to start our notes with a good articulation so that the air doesn't go and just kind of start haphazardly. We want it to start with a nice clean attack. Okay. Now there's a couple of breathing toys that you can use to help you get some nice good air flowing. The first one I advocate is just a straight up pinwheel. Go to your local general store, Walmart or Target or whatever, and see if you can go get a pinwheel. The idea is to hold it at arm's length and just make it move. Okay. What it will show you is how much air is actually leaving your body and hitting the pinwheel. So sometimes our bodies can lie to us and you can think that if you're working hard with your body, that means it's good and that means that you're blowing a lot of air, and not necessarily. Watch this. I'm working much harder and much more restriction, much more tension, and you can see the pinwheel's not moving much at all. Whereas if I relax and concentrate on airflow, counterintuitively, I can get a lot more air to move through there. So pinwheel, great. Have one, put it in your case. Next thing you can use is called the breath builder. If you look up on Google, breath builder, 2 separate words. I think Woodwind Brasswind carries them. Musician's Friend carries them. There's a whole bunch of outlets that carry them. They're about $20, which is more than I would like, but so be it. This is a good exercise or a good device to help you with that nice relaxed inhalation, that O breath we've been talking about. And it also helps you make sure that you're not tensing up and hitching your breath in between the inhalation and the exhalation, because if you do that, the ping pong ball drops. So here's how I'd have you use it. This is correct. So do that a couple of times. If you start to get dizzy, stop. You'll see there's some holes on the top of the device. Don't worry about covering those up just yet. You can worry about that later. And only do probably 4 or 5 breaths at a time and take a little bit of a break so that you don't get lightheaded. You notice that I was inhaling with a nice O breath and then immediately turning that air right back around, and that ping pong ball stayed suspended up at the top of the cylinder the whole time. If somebody does a hitch breath, which is incorrect, this is what you'll see. Can you see it fall in between the inhalation and the exhalation? So this is a great device to keep on hand to be able to tell what you're doing up at the top of the breath to make sure that air doesn't stop. It comes with 2 different tubes. Use the larger of the 2. If you're using breathing tubes like this, or I mean, you can use it as a breathing tube that way. Be careful not to get breathing tubes that are really large. Every now and then I'll see people try to use like toilet paper rolls or something like that. Way too large for trumpet. Any brass instrument, I would argue, but I'm going to stay in my lane with trumpet players, as it were. Your windpipe is about the size of your thumb. So I'll see if I can get it positioned there. That's about how large your windpipe is. And if you try to open it up too much by opening up your mouth, it can really start to slow down the air, and we certainly don't want that to happen. Okay? So there's some things to think about with air. Nice good O breath, flowing in and out, little restriction, watching out for those tense breaths, or the Vader breath, or the hitch breath. And then try that exercise where you put a metronome on 60, inhale for 1 count, exhale for 3 counts. Get yourself a pinwheel and get yourself a breath builder. Hope that helps.